Hey everyone, Mark Meckler here, president of Convention of States, and we have a special video presentation for you today because I can't be with you live. On January 13th, I went to Nebraska and I spoke live in the rotunda there at the state capitol. Really interesting state capitol there because it's a unicameral legislature, meaning it only has one house, right? It has just a Senate, essentially. Everybody's called senator. It's not two houses. That's an interesting building, very different architecture from most capitals, not just the rotunda, but the whole capitol. And we were there because in Nebraska, they're working to remove the sunset clause. They are a past state, but they have a sunset clause that expires in 27. So we want to remove that sunset clause. So I traveled to Nebraska. I always love going to past states and meeting with all my old friends in the grassroots. What you're going to get to see right now is a live presentation that I gave in the rotunda in the Capitol on January 13th. And because you couldn't be there with me, or most of you couldn't be there with me, you get to see it right now.
Well, welcome everybody. Have a chair if you're with Convention of States. We are excited to be here with you. I'm going to open up with prayer and pledge. My name is Deanna Beckett, Regional Director. I've probably not met all of you, but I know a few of you. I've shaken your hands, so I appreciate you being here. I oversee 7 states. You are part of the Wild West region. That includes Kansas all the way up to North Dakota and Colorado all the way up to Montana. And all of you have active legislation like coming within the next 7 to 10 days. It's pretty crazy, so it's going to get wild, and we're going to be really Wild West. So with that, I will open with a prayer, and then we'll do the pledge. So bow with me. Heavenly Father, thank you for this time to gather, to be in this battle together, to bring truth and greatness to this great state of Nebraska. Let your favor ride upon us and be with our words as we share them and encourage them here and going forth out into the state. In Jesus' name, amen. I've got a fake flag, so you'll have to bear with me because I don't see a flag in here. So rise and let's pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. While we're waiting for Senator Lippincott to rejoin us, I'm going to introduce our CEO and co-founder of Convention of States. We've got a presentation, a special presentation to make, and with that, I'll introduce Mark Meckler.
Thank you. Thank you guys for being here today. I heard some of you drove 4 hours or more to be here, and I just want you to know how much I appreciate that. It's not always easy being a citizen activist. I do it all over the country, but I think what you guys do here on the ground is much harder. The day in and the day out of working with your legislators, making sure they understand your perspective, doing so in a way that builds relationships and is kind of a long-term approach to politics. It's not easy, but it is the root of what it means to be an American citizen. I was just on the phone with somebody strangely wandering around over there talking about American history, and we're talking about our approach to saving the country. And what it takes to save the United States of America is not Donald Trump. He's going to go a long way. He's going to help us. It's not the right Congress. It's not whether Mike Johnson is speaker or not. It's not whether we can get rid of the Department of Education or not, which I want to do. There's a lot of things we can do that are reforms, but the key to saving the country, it's really simple. It's called self-governance. It means that we decide as citizens that we're in charge of our country, our local community, our school districts, our county boards, our water districts, all the way up to our state legislatures and on up into the federal government. We own that. We're in control of that. And many years ago, I was studying Romans 13, and I came across the part where it says that we are to obey the governing authorities, and I bristled. And I remember thinking, I don't like this because I don't like the governing authorities, right? And I'm kind of a rebel by nature. And so I read that and I was frustrated by that. And I went to one of my mentors and asked him about that. And he said, well, I think you might be misreading that. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, who are the governing authorities in America? I mean, we know in biblical times the governing authority, Caesar was the governing authority, right? In Roman times, all law came from Caesar, all rulings came from Caesar, all edicts came from Caesar. So when you said obey the governing authorities, that was obey Caesar. So if you look at our country today and we look at our structure of our government, we got to ask ourselves, well, if we look at Romans 13 and we're going to obey our governing authorities, who are the governing authorities? And so I thought about that and I said, well, yeah, I guess it's our government. It's, the president and Congress and maybe the courts and maybe on down into the states. It's our state authorities, our governors and our legislatures. And I looked at that and that seemed to make sense to me vis-a-vis Caesar. And my friend and mentor, Tim, said, no, that's completely wrong. I said, well, I don't understand. Then who are the governing authorities? He said, I want you to stop and think about your own perspective on America, and you tell me who the governing authorities are. And I thought about it for a minute, and then it was like an epiphany. It's like, well, we are, right? See, you're saying we the people. We the people are the governing authorities. That's a pretty incredible statement. Not the President of the United States, not Congress, not the courts. We, the people in this country, according to our Constitution, are sovereign. We're the governing authority. So that has consequences that come with it, right? That has responsibilities that come with it. And what it means is we can't look at Washington, D.C. and say, well, it's going to be great because we're going to elect somebody and they're going to take care of all our problems. What it actually says is it's on us. I remember saying to him when I said it was the president and the courts and all this stuff, I said, Tim, that means if they're not doing what we want them to do, judgment, right? They're in trouble because they're not obeying us, the governing authorities. And he said, well, if you're the governing authority and you're not making them do things that are good and righteous, then who's the judgment upon? And the answer is the judgment's upon us. And I mean that in a biblical sense, and I mean it in a civic sense. When we look at our country and the state of our country, when we're frustrated by what's going on in our schools, when we're frustrated by what's going on in government, when we're frustrated by the debt or whatever it is, and we point at somebody else, my mother-in-law used to say, when you're pointing at somebody, you should look at your hand because there's 3 fingers pointing right back at you, right? It's on us. This is why we run a grassroots organization. This is why I love grassroots politics so much, because grassroots politics acknowledges that it's up to each one of us. People talk about they do their civic duty and they vote. I don't think it's a civic duty to vote. I don't think voting itself is necessarily a good. I think educated voting is a good. I think if you pay attention to the issues, I think if you talk to the person you're going to vote for and you know where they stand on the issues and they align with you, that's a civic good. If you just go check a box because it's an R or a D in a state that has that partisan affiliation, or if you just think, oh, this person's more left or this person, and that's how you vote, I don't think that's a civic good. The framers of our Constitution, the founders, wouldn't have seen that as a civic good. They would have seen that as ignorance, and they would have been appalled. And they expected, because this is how they behaved, that all of us would be involved in governance, that all of us would take our turn. They didn't even think they needed term limits. And the reason they didn't need them is because nobody was going to go there forever. Everybody was going to take their turn and go through because everybody understood their civic responsibility. And so when we founded Convention of States, it was coming out of the Tea Party movement, and I was one of the founders of the Tea Party movement, and I had learned to love and understand and respect the grassroots. Because if you look at the history of the United States of America, it was not made by the famous people. We revere Washington and Adams and Madison and Jefferson from the founding era, Patrick Henry, the great orator. We all know those stories, but those are not the people that actually made the history. It was regular people. It was people like all of us. One of the reasons I love coming to this legislature in particular is because we were talking about grassroots this morning, and I was saying how much I love grassroots. And I love grassroots more than I love the politicians. And I said, except in a state like this where the politicians are the grassroots, right? This is an incredible example of what citizen leadership looks like. And so when we started, me and Mike Ferris started this Convention of States, we understood that this organization would be built on the hard work, the labor, the love, the intelligence, the funds from the grassroots. Not me, because I can get up at a podium and speak. Not some fancy politician somewhere, not Rick Santorum who works for us or Mike Ferris who gets in the media. It would be regular folks like are in the rotunda here today would build this organization. And we wanted to make sure that we had a way to recognize that. And so we do everything we can to recognize our grassroots, and I'll be the first to tell you we don't do enough of it. And the reason we don't do enough of it is because, frankly, you can't. There's no way that we can pay in gratitude or money what the grassroots deserve for what they're doing for this nation in Convention of States. But we do our best, and we do that by recognizing extraordinary grassroots activism. I have on the podium here a challenge coin. For those of you who've been in the military, you know what these are. A lot of times the military officers will have their own challenge coins minted, and they'll give them out on special occasions. Ours is designed to recognize extraordinary activism. And I want you to understand how extraordinary this is. When we started this organization, 300 of these were minted. That's about 11 plus years ago. It took us 10 years to give out 300 of these. 10 years. There are 50 states. That means we were giving out an average of 30 a year, not even one per state. There are millions of activists involved in Convention of States, and we didn't even give out one per state per year. That's how unbelievable it is when somebody gets recognized like this. This is how extraordinary those people are. After a few years, we realized that people were carrying these around with them, and we didn't want them to lose them. I believe these will end up in the Smithsonian. And so I was worried about people losing them, so we had pins made that people could wear on their lapels that represent that they are a winner or a recipient of one of these coins. And when I travel around and I see these coins on somebody's lapel, I get choked up because I understand what they've sacrificed, because I understand the hundreds, if not thousands of hours that they've committed to this cause, the time away from the family, away from their businesses, away from stuff that might be a lot more fun than coming to a Capitol or knocking on doors or making phone calls. They're out there doing that work. And I look at that challenge coin pin and I understand that. This country was founded by men like Levi Preston. Levi Preston was a captain in the Continental Army. You'll never hear of his story in any textbook. You can find it online if you look. It's written down by Mellon Chamberlain. Mellon Chamberlain was a historian in 1843 who was traveling around the country and he was collecting the stories of the last remaining Minutemen. I want you to think about that. 1843, that is long after the American Revolution. These Minutemen that he was collecting their oral histories from would have been in their late 80s or early 90s. Now, a lot of us know people that age now, and they're out working, and they're on the ranch doing ranch work. But back then, that was like Methuselah old. Like, it was crazy. If you had somebody in your town that was 90 years old, everybody in town would have known that person and respected that person. So Chamberlain's traveling around, he's collecting these stories, and he comes across Levi Preston in North Carolina. Preston was a soldier in the Continental Army, a captain, and he was there when that famous shot heard around the world was fired. And so Chamberlain wants to interview him and find out why he fought. Look, he'd heard the words and seen the written words of Washington and Adams and Madison, all these famous people, but he wanted to hear it from the mouth of somebody who picked up a musket and went onto the battlefield. Why did you fight? And he asked him a series of questions. He said, did you go out and fight the Redcoats because of the Stamp Act? You were so frustrated having to buy the stamps. Preston says, stamps? We didn't buy any stamps. The governor locked them in the armory. I'm sure I never bought one of them. No Stamp Act. I learned about the Stamp Act in school. Now, you got to forgive me. I went to school in Los Angeles, California, so I don't really know any history. Not real history, anyway. He asked him, well, maybe it was the high tax on British tea. And he said, son, I was a farmer. We didn't drink any tea. We drank coffee. Boys dumped it in the harbor. We heard about that. That was pretty funny, but no, we didn't drink any tea. So it wasn't the tea tax. He said, well, maybe you're reading the great revolutionary writers. Maybe you're reading Montesquieu and Burke and maybe Paine on Common Sense. And he said, I've never heard of those men. We read the Bible, Psalms, the Almanac, some of us. But those men you speak of, I don't know those names. Now imagine you're Mellon Chamberlain, you know why the American Revolution happened, but everything you're asking a guy who was actually there and fought is not correct. He's saying that's not why he went and fought. So I think Chamberlain gets frustrated. He steps out on a limb and he says, well, maybe it was just the heavy hand of British tyranny. Like you were just sick and tired being under the boot of British tyranny. And he said, tyranny? I never experienced any tyranny. Imagine that. A guy that went up, picked up a musket and went out and fought the Redcoats. So he asked him, well, then what did you mean by it? Preston says, mean by it? And he says, yeah, when you went out and fought, why did you go out and fight the Redcoats? And he said, son, when we went out to meet those Redcoats, we meant only one thing. See, we'd always governed ourselves, and we always intended to govern ourselves. Them Redcoats, they intended that we shouldn't. That's it. That is the entire political philosophy of the American Revolution, stated succinctly by a man who was not famous, who didn't ride in on a white horse, who was never elected to office, who didn't give a big speech, who didn't amass wealth, but who was willing to pick up a musket and fight for his country. He fought for his country because he believed in self-governance. And that's why we do what we do. That's why we're here today, and that's why we have these challenge coins. Because these challenge coins are given to people who are like Levi Preston, not George Washington, not Adams, people who would otherwise get no recognition. This challenge coin originally had had the face of Colonel George Mason on it, who is the kind of founder of the Article 5 movement. He put the second clause of Article 5 into the Constitution. When we finished 300 of them, we broke that mold, and on these coins now, we made another 300 of them, is my dear deceased friend, Dr. Tom Coburn. I refer to him as Dr. Coburn. A lot of you might have known him as Senator Coburn. After he left office, he hated being called Senator Coburn. It just frustrated him because he said, we're not royalty. We don't have titles that stay with us. So those are our titles when we're in office. He said, if you got to call me something and you need a title, just call me Doc. I love this man so much. We just got a new Great Dane puppy. His name's Doc, in honor of Doc Coburn. That's how much I think about this man. He's one of the greatest, I would say the greatest modern statesman, the greatest statesman of the modern era. So we give these challenge coins to very few people. The recommendation has to come up from the state leadership, has to go up through the regional director to our national staff team. We're very serious about who gets these awards. And today I'm really excited because Deanna is going to present one of them, and I get to congratulate the person.
Awesome. I'll hand this to you. We forgot to get a picture with Steve last night, but that's okay. Thank you. Well, this patriot signed the COS petition in the fall of 2019, and they began their duties as the Nebraska Veterans Coordinator in the spring of 2022, and that's when they shared their passion with me. They gobbled up the COSU training and was willing to meet frequently for Zooms with me as they trained for the next level. By August of that same year, this patriot became our state grassroots coordinator. She has recruited and trained a record number of district captains for the COS Nebraska team. The district captains grew from 26 to 30 in 2024, and her goal is to fill every district with a captain and active team. Her endless dedication to recruiting and growing the grassroots is legendary, and she is a great asset to the COS Nebraska team. As of the end of 2024, her activist points are over 39,000. You get that by being a grassroots coordinator, do a lot of follow-up. And so I want you to give a huge hand for Karen Rothschifer.
This means so much. My brothers and sisters of this state is why we do this. We're all in this fight to save our country. I am a veteran of the Vietnam era, back in the late 60s. But we love this country. And 100 years ago, when the communists started moving into our country, we didn't stop them. We should have. And the last 70 has been on my watch. And we're going to get this taken care of. We're going to leave this country for good people, good God-fearing people that love what America stands for. She is the last stance of freedom in this world. If we lose her, we can expect Jesus is coming back real soon.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you. Thank you.
We had the honor of awarding Steve Jessen with the same Patriot Challenge coin. Where did Steve go? Does he wander? Oh, there he is. So last night, so Steve got his Patriot pin last night, so we got Karen's today. And I had the privilege of awarding them a Patriot pin. That's kind of the first stepping stone, a Patriot pin, in the fall of 2023, just before I took over, I hate to say the reins of the Wild West region, but it was kind of given to me. With that, did you want to finish anything up, or do we want to have Senator Lippincott, and then we'll turn it back to you again?
Let's have the senator.
All right. So Senator Lippincott, be happy to have you.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate being asked to carry this bill. As we all know, Convention of States has already passed here in Nebraska, but we have a sunset issue with the bill, which expires in 2027. So right now is the time to get that sunset removed off the bill, and that's what we're hoping to do. The Convention of States, as everyone knows, does three different things. Number one, it eliminates the power, or it addresses the power of federal government. Federal government has its tentacles almost everywhere. As a matter of fact, the cost of the regulations that the federal government has on our individual lives, if you add it all up, $2 trillion. That's a lot. And it also impacts commerce, businesses. As a matter of fact, it's been estimated that the work output of businesses due to excessive federal regulations reduces the output of these companies by 25%. And if you count that up on your calculator, $4 trillion. That is a lot. I'm sure that you all remember that Donald Trump said for every one new regulation during his first term, he wanted to have 2 removed. But it ended up being 8 removed. And he has put out his challenge for his coming up team. He told his varsity team, he says, for every one new regulation, I want 10 regulations removed. So the Convention of States, again, it addresses the power of the federal government. The next thing that it does is it addresses the spending of the federal government. We know right now that we have a deficit of $36 trillion. That's a lot. And if you add up the money that we owe for the entitlement programs that are on the books, it actually goes up to $100 trillion. We're barreling down the road right now, and we're ignoring all the signs that say bridge is out ahead. And we're not even slowing down. As a matter of fact, we're actually accelerating. We need grassroots America to help the federal elected officials to know how to draw the line and to actually draw the line. Which then leads me to my third point. We've talked about addressing the strength of the federal government, addressing the fiscal constraints of the federal government, but also we need to have term limits for our federal government. Right now, our elected officials in Washington, D.C., they have a re-election percentile of approximately 90%. That's a lot. And we all know, we've all heard the little motto that's given by Einstein, which says the definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expecting different results. We've all heard that. But that can be applied with re-electing individuals that have caused this problem. We need to have term limits. We need to have new blood in Washington, D.C. So I am honored. We need the Convention of States, Article 5. We need to apply pressure to our people in Washington, D.C. to bring about change. I'm very grateful for Mark and his leadership in this whole matter, along with some of the folks here locally here in Nebraska. Very grateful for all the work. This is a grassroots operation, and it's from the grassroots up. And that's exactly how our nation was built. Thank you so very kindly. We appreciate you coming today. Mark, you want to give closing words?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Any of you guys want to say anything? Come on, we got a bunch of elected officials and a microphone and nobody's stepping up. I'm impressed. See, this state's even better than I thought. There we go. Yep, nope.
Shut room.
You do
Yeah.
understand that we've got red Russians that are standing before you right now.
People, look, I just want to comment on why we're doing this and why right now, and I think the senator addressed it, but I want to put an exclamation point on this. At this point in American history, and by this point I mean today in American history, we, people who believe in limited government and liberty, have an advantage. I haven't been able to say that for most of my life. We have the momentum. The public is excited about a change in direction, and we need to put the exclamation point on that here in Nebraska. There are a few states that have done sunset clauses. Texas is among them. That's my home state. We'll be working to remove that sunset clause this year. Missouri and Oklahoma also had sunset clauses. They've now removed it. One thing that I want to make sure is that a liberty-loving state like Nebraska doesn't end up being the only state in the United States of America with a sunset clause. Time to get it done is now, and the way to get it done, the best way to get it done in a legislature is the way we're doing it right here, is do it early and fast and just be done with it. We want to take this off the table because then I can assure all of you guys behind me that these guys all want to work on all the other things that are important to you. And that's really important to us. Convention of States activists are true grassroots activists, and they care about everything that happens in this state, not just Convention of States. So our commitment to you guys is we'll get this across the finish line, and then we'll jump on board with everything else that you guys think is important. So thanks for having us in the Capitol today, and we look forward to hanging out and talking to each of you individually. Thank you.